Lillian and Caleb had been married for 5 years after several years of dating. During a vacation together at the sea, Caleb proposed to Lillian, whom he affectionately called Lily. Ever since her university days, Lillian had a friendly group of friends with whom she loved to get together, vacation, and go to concerts. Caleb, however, never felt at ease among her friends. He was more introverted and found their gatherings uninteresting. Sometimes he accompanied Lillian to these events, but she often sensed his discomfort and did not insist on his participation. At first, Lillian was unhappy that Caleb did not participate in these activities and often called him boring. Eventually, however, she came to terms with his reluctance to participate. During one of these gatherings, which Caleb decided to skip, the group received an unexpected surprise. Their mutual friend Isaac, who was working abroad and whom they hadn't seen in years, dropped by the apartment where they were spending the weekend unexpectedly. Everyone cherished Isaac's company. He was always the center of the party, telling funny and fascinating stories that captured everyone's attention. Isaac said that his work contract was over, and considering whether to extend it, he decided to take a vacation and visit his hometown. The whole evening passed in excitement and memories as everyone recognized Isaac. His friends eagerly questioned him about his life in Europe and current events in his country. Lillian could not take her eyes off him. During the time they had not seen each other, Isaac had transformed. He looked even better, he had gotten fitter, and he had not lost his charm and charisma. Isaac enjoyed the warm welcome, but he seemed to be especially enchanted by Lillian's attention. Years ago, there was a moment when Lillian and Isaac could have started a relationship. At one birthday party, after having a few drinks, they confessed their feelings to each other. That evening, carried away by the moment, they spent the night together. However, their budding relationship was interrupted when Isaac received an offer to work abroad. All the necessary paperwork was quickly completed, and he was set to leave the following week. Lillian was heartbroken, but eventually reconciled and met Caleb, her future husband. Over time, the feelings she had for Isaac faded, and she never told Caleb about their brief relationship. That evening, back home, Lillian excitedly told Caleb about Isaac's unexpected return from abroad and his sudden appearance at the meeting. She enthusiastically retold Isaac's stories as if she had been a participant in them herself. She never ceased to praise Isaac, and to some extent her husband. But even as Lillian's eyes glistened with delight as she talked about her friend, Caleb couldn't resist making a few remarks about him. Lillian stopped talking abruptly, her gaze full of resentment in Caleb's eyes. That night, the only words she said before she went to bed were "good night." It had been a week since Isaac's unexpected visit, but Lillian couldn't get him out of her mind. She remembered how easily he understood her, often finishing her sentences as if he had read her mind. Her coworkers even noticed her absent-mindedness and often asked if she was getting enough sleep. Unable to resist her feelings any longer, Lillian decided to contact Isaac and suggest a meeting. To her delight, he quickly responded and agreed to meet. In the evening, she informed her husband that she would be late at work and might not be home in time. She met Isaac at a coffee shop where they talked and laughed for several hours. Being around him made Lillian feel as light and happy as she had years ago. She didn't need alcohol. She was intoxicated only by her newly rekindled feelings. So when Isaac had suggested that they continue their pleasant conversation at his house, she had readily agreed. However, their meeting went beyond a simple conversation. From that day on, Lillian began to lie to her husband, telling him that she began to get together with friends more often and often worked part-time during the week. Since Caleb did not attend these gatherings or verify her stories, he remained in the dark about what was really going on. One day as Caleb was leaving work, he decided to take a leisurely walk to unwind. He knew that his wife would be late again that day, so he took his time getting home. He figured he would have plenty of time to heat up dinner later. Lost in his thoughts, he was suddenly interrupted by someone calling out to him from behind. "Caleb, hi, long time no see." Luke greeted him as he approached. Luke was one of Lillian's friends from the same social circle. The men shook hands and struck up a conversation. "How's Lillian doing? I haven't seen her in a while." "Is she doing well?" inquired Luke. "Don't you guys see each other every week?" Caleb replied, perplexed. "We haven't seen her home much lately. Our schedules just didn't coincide, or she had other plans." "Everyone feels a little left out," Luke remarked. Caleb stared at Luke, trying to comprehend what he was hearing. "When was the last time you two got together?" he asked. "About a month and a half ago when Isaac came to visit," Luke replied. Caleb was overcome with shock. Isaac, the very friend his wife had been talking about so much lately. It was after that meeting that her frequent late nights and imaginary meetings with friends had begun. "Do you happen to know if they're planning to meet up with the band again this Saturday?" asked Caleb, trying to confirm his suspicions. Luke informed him that nothing of the sort was planned. Caleb now understood and decided to follow Lillian discreetly to find out where she was really going and catch her in the act. On the agreed-upon day when Lillian left the house, Caleb used the tracking app on his phone to find out her current location. They had decided to use the app for emergencies, and Lillian was confident that her husband would never check on her without a good reason, trusting him completely. About half an hour later, Caleb pulled up to where the app said his wife was. It was an ordinary apartment building. He parked the car in front of one of the entrances and waited. Not an hour later, he saw Lillian coming out of the next doorway, squinting at her phone screen, apparently checking to see where her cab was. She looked flushed and her hair was slightly disheveled. Caleb honked to get her attention. Lillian looked puzzled at first, as if she didn't recognize the car, but then slowly and hesitantly approached her husband's car. She opened the front passenger door and asked what he was doing there. Caleb calmly asked her to get in the car. Lillian silently complied, and they sat in silence for an eternity. Feeling the tension building, Lillian finally broke the silence and asked what was going on. Caleb told her that he knew everything, that there had been no hanging out with friends, and asked Lillian to explain where she'd been and with whom. Lillian tried to play the victim, but Caleb completely lost confidence in her. He started yelling in anger. Finally, Lillian confessed her affair with Isaac. Without another word, Caleb started the car and drove away. With fear in her eyes, Lillian asked Caleb where they were going. Caleb replied that she needed to pack because he wouldn't live with her for a day. The divorce was quick. Caleb was deeply depressed and tried his best not to dwell on his wife's betrayal. Lillian, on the other hand, was not particularly worried about this turn of events. She continued her relationship with Isaac, now without the need for secrecy. In her mind, Lillian had already envisioned a strong and lasting relationship with Isaac. What she didn't realize was that during their first meeting, Isaac had told everyone that he was only coming back to town for a while. When she learned that he was leaving in just a week, she declared that she was ready to follow him anywhere in the world. Lillian had counted on Isaac to cover all the costs of tickets and visas, but Isaac wasn't the type to take care of everything, and Lillian just didn't have the money. For a long time, Lillian had been in love with Isaac, and they exchanged numerous messages. But when she found out that he had a steady girlfriend in his home country, her heart was shattered. The realization hit her hard. She had ruined everything. She was gripped by a deep, debilitating sadness from which she saw no way out. To combat her loneliness during the day, Lillian went to work, but every night she was alone, struggling with her broken heart.